have to admit, I love roses, and what's not to love? Those beautiful blooms in a rainbow of colours just lighting up the garden across the warmer months. That incomparable, intoxicating perfume. And once established, they're surprisingly hardy too. You know, I've never actually grown a rose in one of my own gardens. Sure, I've looked after heaps over the years in other people's landscapes, but I've never included one in one of my own. So I've decided to fix that. I've got a couple here I'm going to put in. Scary looking things, aren't they? More on them later. You know, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most new gardeners probably don't even think about putting roses into their landscapes today because they have the mistaken belief that roses are difficult to care for. Nothing could be further from the truth. Modern roses are very easy care, particularly if you get two things right. One of those is to select the right varieties for your region, and the second is to plant your roses properly, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. Now, for pretty obvious reasons, this is called a bare-rooted rose. Roses go dormant across winter, so they can be lifted from the ground and can easily be freighted even by regular post without needing to be potted and have the potting mix and everything attached to them. Now, if you do order your roses by mail, when you receive them, unpack them as soon as possible, keep them in a shady spot, make sure they don't dry out, and then get them in the ground as quickly as you can. Well, behind me here is the bed that I'm going to put our roses into. We've grown veggies in it before, but I've decided I want something a little bit more permanent in there. The spot you put your roses needs to get at least half a day's sunlight across the warmer months of the year. Before I plant my roses, I need to improve this soil. It's pretty depleted after having veggies growing in it for years, so I'm going to add a really good quality compost. Any compost or manures you add need to be really well rotted down. If it's too fresh, it'll scorch the new roots as they start coming out. And make sure it's blended through really thoroughly. Well, that's my soil sorted out, all blended through. I have my two rose varieties, double knockout and forget-me-not. How did I settle on these two? Well, the suppliers, Corporate Roses, gave me the advice I needed. I gave them the criteria, which was they had to survive Sydney's humid summers, and we wanted lots of flowers in pinks and reds, preferably with a fragrance. They recommended these two. Now, we've got to decide on a spacing for where they go in the bed here. So the front one's easy enough, equally in the middle from the sides and the same setback. Then they recommend on the labels that they should be around about 900 mil apart, so just under a metre. So I'm going to put one round about here and one a little bit further back. Time for a quick bit of spade work. One last thing to do with your roses before you put them in the ground is to inspect their roots. Look for any that have been splintered or broken when they've been dug out of the ground. Grab a sharp pair of secateurs and just snip off the damaged bit. Clear out the hole to make sure it's deep enough. Now look at the branching pattern of your rose and position it so that it will be able to grow and spread without interference. Gently backfill around the roots with the improved soil. You may find it's easier to make a little mound of soil underneath the roots to support the plant while you do so. Now make sure you don't plant your rose any deeper than it was originally planted. You'll generally notice a bit of a soil mark on the trunk. Otherwise, just make sure that the graft, it looks like a kink in the trunk, is at least 25 millimetres above the soil. Use the remaining soil to create a watering basin around your roses. This just makes it easier to keep them well watered while they're establishing. Well, that's the roses planted. Once they're in the ground, I trimmed the stems back by about a half to stimulate new growth. I've surrounded my two bush roses with flower carpet roses. They'll work as ground covers and provide a bit of a contrast. Now, there's 4 simple things left to do. Feed. I'm using a controlled release fertiliser. It'll keep feeding my roses for months. Then mulch. This is loosened straw. Breaks down reasonably quickly, adding organic matter to the soil and a little bit of nitrogen, which is great for lush leaf growth. Just make sure that you don't push the mulch up against your trunks. Next, water each plant well with a diluted seaweed tonic. And finally, water gently all over to settle the mulch down. Most of the time I'd water before mulching, but we've had some recent rain, so the soil is quite damp. And there you have it. From an unwanted veggie patch to a new rose garden in not much more than an hour.